Yes. Yep, it's restarted. Yes, so if you, it seems like that link. Yep. Yep. Okay, I'll hang up. So sorry about that, everyone. What happened was that when Evan Turner left, he was still the host and he ended the meeting for everybody.
Yeah. Yeah. I was going to say, Tessa, I think you could ask Linda, but I don't think it's no fault of your own, but I think it's probably not good policy to have a guest who's not a town official be the host. I think you can let people share screens without them becoming host capacity. I just know the settings.
Yeah, I can check in on that. I haven't been able to figure out a different way to do that, but
Yeah. There's some way where you can let people do it.
You can also share host, which means if the host you're sharing, if Tessa as the host shares the hosting with Evans in this case and doesn't just turn it over to him, then when he goes away, we won't go away. If you follow that.
Yes. Yeah, I didn't see it as an option, but I will ask Linda about that.
Yeah. I was just thinking about host has some rights and stuff. I don't think he can necessarily see the chat, but not that we're supposed to be chatting anyway, but I think the less guests have control of the meeting, the better. But yeah, somehow Linda figured it out. Who's
We've lost Jeff.
oh, that's Deacon. Okay.
I'm now 47 M1Q.
Okay.
Which I'm happy to be, but
you can go up to those three little dots in your square and you'll see an option to rename.
oh, okay.
And then just put your name in. Or you could put fungus
I
in.
know I'm getting there, Steve.
Okay.
Well, that was interesting.
Yeah, that was.
Yeah. So Deacon, the thing I was going to suggest before we do the minutes, but maybe after the minutes, was since I know Jeff has talked to Penny and Miriam's on the Concom, I was just going to see if either of them had a quick update about the ANRADs in relation to this.
Well, neither one of them is on my screen now.
No, they're not. And
I mean, I can give you an update.
okay. Oh, that's right. You're the land clerk.
Yeah. I can give an update. So that was some more information than the commission has, because from the commission's point of view, we haven't heard that Baker is completely off the table. That was, new information. We had heard that there was the 2 new sites that they were looking in. So at this point, what happened was that they proposed certain set of wetland maps, and the commission decided to hire Emily, I'm blanking on her last name, but as a outside wetland consultant to relook at the wetlands. And so consolidating her updates on the wetland maps, we haven't seen any of the updated wetland delineation maps for any of the projects at this point.
Okay. And one thing that Miriam had told me that I'd rather she had said, but my understanding was that what they submitted so far were incomplete.
Evan Turner turned us all off. Tessa's got us back on, so I think you can get back in.
No, just an old email.
By just using the Zoom link.
Same link.
I just texted him to do that.
It's in that email I sent around the other day. Yeah, but if you get to that email, there's the link is right there.
Is that Jeff?
Yeah.
I could email it to him again.
I'm trying to get Jeff back on now.
Deacon, did you ever think you'd be this technologically savvy?
Michael, I'm not.
You're coaching Jeff.
You changed your name on Zoom.
I used the phone.
We should, think about getting, a Facebook page, something like this happens and there's a technology disruption, we can, send out updates to the public so that they can know what's going on.
Yeah, she will.
We can't.
She will.
It's,
Use Facebook, probably not. But-
yeah, I mean, the police department uses it, but it's not it's a privately owned platform.
Right.
So there's uses for it, but in terms of the official stuff, there's always requests for how do you make information more accessible and blah, blah, blah. But between open meeting law stuff and then the fact that there's been lots of conversation, on select board and web committee that since we're a town government, we should be using the town government platforms and not private ones. So there's the challenge is there's so much technology that makes communication easier, but in the realm of governmental business, doesn't work that way. Unfortunately, it's a challenge.
Right. Well, I mean, not to conduct official business, just as like a contingency for some sort of technology incident like this one.
Oh, like right now, this one.
Right. Yeah. Just so that someone could go and
Okay,
Post
here
on
we go.
Facebook
I'm gonna hang up now.
You're assuming Jeff has a Facebook page.
Yeah. No, I know. Perfect solution by any means. We could also.
I'm just kidding.
on Instagram and get everything.
We're back.
Okay, good. Well, so when we were cut off, we were talking about the minutes. There'd been a motion to approve and a second. Are there any more comments?
I had no edits.
Okay, great. So I'll call the roll. Robert,
Yes.
Steve,
Yeah,
Nathan,
Yes.
Linda,
Yes.
Jeff,
Aye.
Michael,
Aye.
and I'm an aye. Okay. So let's move on to municipal vulnerability preparedness.
Well, can I ask you a question, Deacon?
Please.
It wasn't on the agenda, but it was an official meeting on the 15th. Do you want us to approve the section where we were in?
At a recent, the 9:15 minutes got past me. Donna has advised that we can't approve minutes that are not on the agenda. So I think we
Okay.
should deal with that next time.
Sure.
Agreed.
Okay. So I guess I'm next up for the MVP.
Yes.
Okay. So I'll try to be brief, but so for Nathan's benefit and Tessa's benefit, and just as a reminder to everybody else, probably this time last year, the planning board had a conversation about climate change and adaptation and mitigation. And there's a state program, which is a municipal vulnerability preparedness program. And I had asked the planning board if there was support for me to go to the select board and write a grant to get money and to sort of get us into this program, since there's a lot of, I forget the percentage, but a lot of municipalities are already in it. So we as a body decided yes. I went to the select board. They said yes. I wrote the grant and we got the grant. And then Becky and I implemented it. We hired an outside consultant from Fuss and O'Neill. And so this spring and summer, we orchestrated what was a community engagement process. So in the full report, which I sent you, there's a whole list. There's about 40 people from a whole bunch of town committees. There was a smaller group of about 12 to 15, and then 40 people representing all different perspectives. And the whole idea was basically to assess in terms of climate change, what the greatest priorities were in terms of threats and possible solutions. And so over the last month or so, I sent you two documents, which should be in the email. One's the full report, which is really long. And then more recently, I think it was last week, I sent you an excerpt that I created. And I've talked to Becky a little bit about this, and she and I were the sort of the point people, but the general approach that I see is this report identifies high, medium, and low priorities and areas of risk and opportunity in terms of climate mitigation. And it touches lots of different committees and boards in town. And so what I did in the excerpt was go through things that specifically should be either responsibility or something that we could discuss as a planning board. And so I wanted to mention it now because what I'm thinking I'd like to do, and it's, it's counterbalanced by how much we get swamped by special permits, of course, because that's going to take priority. But the idea is there's a lot of themes through here. And, just at the highest level, like the master plan was written and no one was talking about climate change. So looking at that is one of the things to say, let's look at the master plan and see if there's any zoning related things around climate that we would want to look at. And not to say that we have to do them now, but more to identify. So that was one of the things in the high priority. A couple of other ones are just to give you a flavor. They recommended establishing a regulatory review process for future developments. And that's to address impervious cover and stormwater management, et cetera. To access green infrastructure opportunities regarding stormwater management, which might be us, but also might be Water Resources Committee. Work with Planning Board and Select Board to ensure that commercial development remains appropriate to town. So that sort of gets to our prior presentation. Support incentives that allow for individual homeowners to have self-sufficiency. So off the grid installations, batteries, et cetera. So there's things that arose from all these conversations with the 40 plus people, which I think we can then look at and say, which ones do we want to sort of see if we want to tweak things or whatever. So mostly I just wanted to put this in front of us and see if it would be worth, if you guys looked at this, maybe having a subsequent conversation and trying to figure out of the excerpted list that's highlighted, which is sort of the cheat sheet. Are there any things that raise to the top? I mean, of course, the master plan is a huge one, so that may or may not be doable given our solar thing, but there might be small tidbits, but it's worth a conversation, I think. So that's what I wanted to present.
Do you mind saying the name of the contractor who helped with the
It's Fuss, Fuss, and O'Neill, O'Neil. And I think they're like in Westfield. Apostrophe. Sorry, what did I say?
Comma.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Deacon. Always, I count on you for that.
Always here with the little
Yeah.
stuff.
That's important.
One response I have is that it seems to me that some sort of process that got us to what we really care about is what we need to do with respect to zoning.
Right.
And we need to really focus on that. And it's going to necessitate involving other people's concerns, but that's what we really care about.
Yeah, I agree. That's the stuff that I highlighted was zoning related things.
Yeah.
So, if we wanted to, for example, incentivize self-sufficiency, there might be zoning stuff in there. That's what my attempt was, because it seems like throughout all these recommendations, some would go to Water Resources, some would go to Concom, some would go to Recreation, some would go to the Select Board. So it sort of gets divvied up across town.
We may wind up having more than one meeting a month in the future. I mean, we've done it before.
That's the first time I've ever heard that admitted up front.
Oh, come on, Steve.
One meeting a month. That's how I got on this board, with that promise.
Somebody lied to you, Steve.
Somebody did, Deacon.
It wasn't me.
I thought there was 2 meetings a month anyway.
No, the default is one a month, but we don't always adhere to that.
So just an interesting aside, having a solar array dedicated to town is one form of self-sufficiency and mitigating climate change locally.
Yeah, I mean, the thing there, and I'll just say, having talked to Becky and done some research, there's municipally owned solar, which is what Becky's been interested in. And there's been discussion about, would you do it on 032, for example, which, Nathan, is the lot on Leverett Road across from the
Yeah.
DPW.
Yeah.
But municipally owned, that's why I asked him about that, because he was talking about operations and not ownership. And the two things that made Wheelock attractive to some people was the idea that either we would get energy directly out of it, which we don't because it all goes to the grid, or we'd get serious money out of it. And we get some money, but not anywhere on the scale of what they're making in revenue. So if you own it,
as you explained it, Michael, we get the taxes based on the value of that installation,
yeah.
like a house, basically.
Yeah, and I was actually pretty astounded because, DOR sort of regulates that. And so one would assume in a negotiation you can reach high, but because we're a public body and there's precedent, towns are only allowed to reach so high in terms of what they're asking, even for just the capital value of the array.
Right.
So it's very modest. I mean, I think.
I'm sorry,
Yeah,
can you explain that again? I'm just
yeah,
about being a public body and.
Yeah. So in terms of the pilot, which is payment in lieu of taxes, what ends up happening is the select board negotiates with the developer, and the developer doesn't have to pay taxes, but they pay these other payments. So I think we get like $50,000 a year currently for Wheelock. But it's based on the actual physical arrays. So it's just like the steel girders and the panels, as opposed to the revenue that the company's getting for generating income off of the energy. And so even if you said, we want top dollar for that for the steel and the arrays, the Department of Revenue for the state, basically there's parameters of what's reasonable. And so you can't say, oh, this is a negotiation. We want a lot, and we're not going to support it unless you give us a lot. You're not allowed as a town to do that. So it's very narrow what we can ask for. We can ask for some or less, but not a lot. That's how I would ask it. And that's different from having municipally owned solar, which is something that would then, we would actually get the revenue. We would go in. The problem with municipal owned solar is that it requires upfront capital costs that we don't have. It's, millions and millions of dollars. So we don't ever directly get the energy, nor do we get the real money.
Right.
I was
Robert,
concerned about this offer of an operating and management contract. I think that would be very risky for the town, given that there would be some exposure there in terms of stranded costs, I suspect. He didn't say no about risk sharing.
Is there still a pending case as to the legality of taxing solar operations in town?
Yes, there is. And as far as I know, it still involves a court case that is in progress.
Uh-huh.
That was
Because
what Donna told us the last time she was with us.
Yeah. I mean, there is something in state tax law that says you can't levy property taxes on solar facilities. It's probably old. It probably refers to rooftop installations from a while back, but now, like the solar exemption in Section 3, a solar facility is more than a rooftop hot water heater. So.
Yeah. Because, one thing, taxing as Michael says, taxing the steel and the equipment is one thing, but if it were taxed at the market value of an operating facility, that would take account of the profit that was generated by the capital goods.
Correct.
If the law just read that you could tax on the basis of market value, you'd be way ahead.
Yeah. They don't want to share.
Well, nobody does. That's,
No, but they do want to throw us a bone by saying we can get paid for operating the facility because we're local.
yeah.
Right. Right.
Well, we should take care. So we're a little off municipal vulnerability preparedness at the moment. I mean,
That's true.
how do, thank you. Thank you. So what do we want to do with this discussion right now?
I was just looking for feedback from everybody. Is this something that, you know, if you look over the document, maybe either next meeting or the one after that, we just sort of, you know, figure out, are there pieces of it that we might want to look at? I mean, climate change is a real thing. And the whole idea of this grant was to get ahead of it so that there's a few things. One is that we can go for additional money as a town, just generally, whether it's not necessarily the planning board, but it opens us up to getting more money for stuff. But in terms of, you know, part of the role of the planning board is to think into the future, you know, the zoning components. There's the master plan and then there's the zoning. And so if there's things that we want to do that we think would be prudent. I mean, one of the, you know, apropos of this discussion, one of the recommendations is under the high priority is de-incentivize land clearing for building solar installations, which is exactly what this discussion today was. So if that's a high, you know, if that came out of this process and we're saying this had broad input, it's something we should be taking into account. And what does that look like? You know, so that's sort of like the protecting of land. There's also the incentivization. You know, the other thing that's really huge, which often isn't thought about, is climate migration. You know, so just like after 9/11, when everyone moved from Boston to New York up here, it's going to happen again after the pandemic. And then as flooding happens on the coast, people are going to be moving. And so, you know, my personal sense is, you know, we had the limits on building a bunch of years ago because we were trying to figure it out. But as, you know, there's a potential for a lot of people to be wanting to move to the country and come to Shutesbury. And getting ahead of that and thinking about it before we're under pressure. So it's those kind of things that I think as a planning board, we want to be thoughtful about. I don't think it's a rush job.
You say that, Michael, because, you know, I've been obviously trying to consume some of the laws, and there's the rate of development is what you refer to, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Which one is that, in the zoning law, or is that in a zoning bylaw, or is that in one of the other ones?
It's
It was in the
expired.
zoning bylaw, but it's expired.
It's expired, right? So that clause of the bylaw, you know, it went, you know, it said something, you know, regarding the next 5 years, and then the next 5 years after that, and it was, you know, it ended in like 2014 or 2015 or something like that.
Yeah, it's over.
Okay.
And there
So
hasn't been aggressive development for quite a while in town.
No, but I think that's the point is they might feel the pressure.
Yeah, but well, and one thing I know too is that when I participated in this, I learned that FERCog is working on climate change zoning amendments. So there may be some information there.
FERCog?
Well, zoning amendments attempting to deal with climate change are something that FERCog is working on.
What is FERCog?
Franklin Regional Council of Governments.
Okay. Yeah.
It used to be our county government before they abolished the counties, and then they set up these alternatives to county government.
Do you know, as just a factoid, only in Western Mass were counties abolished. In Eastern Mass, they still exist. And
there's where the problems were.
Yeah. And FERCog's the only one left standing. Hampden County doesn't have one, and Hampshire County folded. But Nathan, it's a nonprofit that does services and represents some towns. You have to buy
But they may be of some help.
Yeah. Oh, I agree. I think that'd be great.
So FERCog is looking at potential zoning bylaws in relation to climate change preparedness.
Yeah.
Yeah, I go to their meetings. they have a Franklin County Planning Board, and I'm the delegate to go to those. So sort of keeping up with what they're doing.
Are you delegated by this body?
This body and the select board, I guess, or somebody, I don't remember.
Yeah, we delegate Jeff to do this. But have you learned anything about this issue?
Not a ton. They spend a lot of time on the Northfield pump storage facility and Connecticut River issues up that way. And a lot of time on what's going on in Greenfield. Yeah, but not so much on this so far.
Yeah, I mean, I've
What's
gone,
going on in Greenfield.
yeah. I used to go for work. I used to go to the PVPC meetings, which is the, you know, the regional planning agency for Hampden and Hampshire. And there was, I mean, like Pelham was going, Northampton was going, Amherst was going. I mean, Hampshire County's having active discussions about this stuff. So, I mean, there is regional discussion. So I think what I would just say is if people look through this and maybe we can just figure out if there's, you know, stuff that pops that we might want to think about.
I will definitely put it on the next agenda. I mean, I think it is important.
Yeah.
Great. Thanks, Deacon.
Well, the planning board has a bit to do with roads. You know, by statute, we have road functions, and you know, one of the things out there that we have to consider is with more and severe rain coming often in the form of large storms, washing out roads and things like that. And then also the trickiness of winter now, and the problems that unpaved roads bring us in those respects. I know there's not unanimity about that, but paved roads, in my opinion, unpaved roads, in my opinion, just don't work as well anymore. So, plus we've got tons of people living on them, which is much more than they were ever designed for. So.
Yeah, I think the interesting thing that came out for me in this stuff just scientifically was that you have what seem contradictory experiences happening. So we're going to have more intense rain as we've been seeing. So in more intense storms with more water, but then also periods of drought. And so one of the things to think about is, maybe for us, maybe for other committees, I think just well viability is going to be an issue. And so as more people come in and they're all tapping into the aquifer and we're on top of the hill, currently the test wells say that we're doing okay, but that's a real zoning development issue, that if we get more people and everyone's tapping into their wells, but the droughts are creating more, people's wells are already failing in town. So more demand and more heat, it creates a non-viable situation for residents.
I have kind of a two-part question with, in regard to development, right? There's requirements about, road frontage with, and then, existing lots, you can do a, subdivision, right? If somebody has a bunch of land, they can, create a new lot, right? Has there been analysis done to figure out, based on our current zoning law, bylaw, what the maximum number of residential new housing starts could be completed within town, within the existing framework? And the second part of my question is, what do we have in terms of, I know basically, based on the master plan, what I've seen of it, you don't want to have new roads going through our big, uninterrupted contiguous forests. So, what I haven't gotten so far in my research is to determine, what kind of availability developers have for building new roads that would increase the amount of roadside frontage for new housing.
Well, if I may, what was, hit me again with the first part of that question?
The first part is how many, new
Okay.
housing permits could
Gotcha.
be issued based on our existing laws,
Yeah.
pursuant to roadside frontage and.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's called a
existing laws.
build-out analysis, and that was done. That's a build-out analysis, and it was done during the first master plan work.
Okay.
And they came up with some number that was probably pretty high.
I think it was around 12,000 people.
Right. Pretty high.
Wow.
I've done a lot of build-out analysis, and the only way to do it accurately is by hand. And they're doing them all by GIS now, and kind of machine doing them. And really, unless you're sort of an experienced developer who can look at a piece of land and figure out how it can be developed, and you do parcel by parcel, which is very tedious. If you do it that way, you can get a fairly good estimate. But most of the build-out analysis are done by machine, and they, it's just a number crunch. So we did have that done back in 2004 or before for our master plan. It showed a lot of development. So at the time. And as far as new subdivision roads go, that's what our Article 5, our open space design, is designed to curb. It just changes the whole way that development is done. And it's not done by putting in long labyrinthine types of subdivision roads to create frontage for all these new house lots. It's kind of an area-based calculation instead. And roads are simply put in to access the homes, roads, shared driveways, other methods. So a lot less roadway. And generally 80% open space is preserved at the same time. So we got a pretty good handle on the effects of subdivisions when we wrote Article 5 in the 2008 zoning.
Okay.
You won't see any big standard sprawling subdivisions that have just house lots and streets in Shutesbury. That'll never happen again. So.
Jeff, if there's, I mean, I don't think we want to or can become exclusive, but if you see pressure on climate migration, how would open space design, do you think, receive that pressure? I mean, is it sort of elastic enough that it would just absorb it?
You mean by yeah, I mean it can absorb it, but the most important thing in open space design is the land that gets preserved.
Yeah.
You just can't convert a whole parcel anymore to house lots and streets. 80% of it, if it's backland, is going to be preserved, and you're going to have houses on smaller lots that are relatively clustered. They're still acre lots. It's big, but you preserve a lot of land. So it's density negative compared to what we used to have.
Right.
It's less density and a lower build out town-wide.
So in terms of preserving open space, it's good. It will just, but in terms of population growth and demand on either roads or services and stuff, that'll still occur. Yeah, I mean, I think it seems like, on different levels, these are just deep conversations that this is the time to sort of think about, if we can maintain the culture, the character of the town, how do we do it in the context of climate change?
I think we've gotten,
yeah.
I'm thinking maybe we should move on from MVP. Are we good?
Yep.
Because Nathan called, I mean, to get to special permit stuff, I mean, And in particular, Nathan called me about a potential conflict of interest, and he has since talked to the State Ethics Commission, and I'm hoping he can say something about that.
Well, I fired off an email, shortly before the meeting started. I don't know if anyone had a chance to look at that.
I did.
I skimmed it, yeah.
So, from the state's perspective, I think that I'm okay. The issue would be, my employer is ISO New England, the regional grid operator. And, so with some of this, solar installations, right, these entities could be, for instance, National Grid is a market participant of ISO New England. And, particularly under one section of the law, which is highlighted in the email, I want to say it's like, I'm just going to, okay. Section 23B3, if you have a situation where there's an appearance of conflict of interest, someone might reasonably conclude that, which in this case, you could conclude, this guy's on the planning board, he works for ISO New England, right? He's wheeling and dealing with these, utilities, what's going on here. I can file a form with either, as an appointed board member, it would be the planning board and the select board, because they're the appointing authority, or if I become elected, it would be with the town clerk that discloses, okay, hey, listen, I'm on the planning board, and this could appear to be an interest, but it's not. It gives you an area to explain it, so on and so forth. And as long as I do that and disclose it, then I'm good to go. The other thing is that I am also beholden to my company's code of conduct. That's a public document that I also put into the email. And, I've been in touch with the, human resources, and, so I need to, talk with them a little bit more to make sure. In this particular agreement, I actually think I'm going to be good, because I don't believe that, AMP is a market participant, or that they're going to become a market participant, because it sounds like they are working with National Grid in that regard, right? So, they're going to have an arrangement with National Grid to do this. And so it's really getting a couple layers away from my company. So I really think it's going to be okay with this AMP solar stuff. And I'm going to, dig pretty deep on that with my employer to make sure. I don't think there's any risk, for me speaking, legally speaking, but I got to make sure I'm not going to lose my job over this stuff. And, I think, if it becomes a problem, then, I want to work with everyone to make sure we get a reasonable solution, so that, there's not a real crunch when it comes to any kind of special permit review and things like that. So that's my spiel for now. There will be a little bit more to come on that, but right now I think it's looking pretty good. I'm cautiously optimistic.
Nathan, can I ask you one follow-up?
Yeah.
When I was on select board, I remember doing some research on municipal employees, because it's a different class than regular employees.
Right.
And between getting the email and our meeting, I didn't get a chance to sort of dig back through my research, but did they say why you were a special municipal employee?
No.
Okay.
That was, I got something saying I was a special municipal employee from the town clerk. I think I fall into that category. Isn't that true?
If I remember correctly, when we were on the select board, we had to proactively define, I think you are, because I think we had to define all the committees as such, you get treated in a different way than if you're just a municipal employee. And so a lot of the conflicts that we all have, because it's a small town and we have jobs and we're representing, like Jeff does consulting. So if you're not a special municipal employee and you do consulting, you're a higher risk of conflict. But I was just curious. I'll look in. I can shoot you an email. But
Yeah, and when I was speaking with the State Ethics Commission, my conversations with them were based on the presumption that I am special in the special category.
Right. Well, you are special, but
Yeah, we're all special here, I think.
Well, good. So, but I know that, Michael raised the problem of all the special permit activity, and as the truant officer for the board, I feel this pretty strongly myself, because it's really hard to make sure you've got a super majority available to vote. It's real. It's a struggle. It can be a real struggle.
Yeah.
Good.
Deacon, one thought that, I had, because the concern for me was that, even if they phase in these projects, conceivably you could have 4 or 5 projects on the table at the same time. And given all these deadlines, it seemed to me, but correct me if I'm wrong, some of these to get approved only because we don't hit the deadlines, which, that just would not be good. I mean, I don't think we're fulfilling our responsibilities. So that was my concern. And originally, I had thought, well, is there any way of limiting them so that, you can only have so many live special permits at a time? The other thing is, and Jeff can fill in here because I always forget the number, but like the ability for the planning board to hire consultants, that, we might want to raise up the fact that, maybe we have a project manager, because my sense is you guys had your hands full up, up to your eyeballs in paper with Wheelock, and that was just one project, and so if we're managing 4 or 5, you really need someone who's doing this project management, who can track the details and shed the paper and all that kind of stuff. And it's not going to be any of us. So I was trying to figure out, how do we manage the workload so that we're just not giving them a project because we blew a deadline? But Jeff, does that fall into that category of consultants?
It could. Yep.
It's just going to be an issue for the Conservation Commission as well. I mean, these ANRADs are time consuming, and then there's going to be the notice of intents.
Yeah, it feels like they're flooding the zone, and, it's nice that we're a small town, but we're volunteer boards and they're a commercial outfit.
I would not be surprised if that's a strategy at work.
I'm sure it is.
I believe Steve Bannon refers to flooding the zone with shit.
But they do want to work with us, just in volume.
In volume.
Exercise in brute force.
Right.
The applicant has to agree, but there is a form to extend the hearings and extend the deadlines.
Right. But if they don't agree,
But
we
they-
don't have any recourse.
Right.
Yeah.
Hey,
Yeah.
we extended Wheelock for 2.5 years.
Yeah.
Did I get the sense that they were challenging the determination about the subdivision on Pratt Corner? It sounded like they were.
They wanted us to play with them and make it
Right.
an extension.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, it just sounded like he was ignoring that. I just wondered if that was being
think that-
challenged.
I think that was only one of the instances in which he was ignoring the zoning.
Yeah,
The other being the driveway clause.
the driveway.
Yeah, that's one of them. Yeah.
Yeah. And those pesky wetlands.
And those pesky wetlands. You can move dirt anywhere though, right?
Yeah.
I think he's
Yeah. But I think, as I've thought about it, this whole idea of, we should, I think, keep this discussion live, because if we wanted to do something like have a project manager who could catch the first one and then the second one and the third one, we'd have to sort of be ready to do that. and then you have to find the person and get them up to speed. Because I can't imagine that, Tessa could handle more than one without her, her head blowing off. So, and if there's other solutions, but I think that's just my concern is that they will flood the zone and we're going to be so stretched. We'll be meeting every day and we actually won't have the ability to do any qualitative, oversight.
What kind of timelines are we talking about with, once an application is submitted?
65 days in which to open the public hearing. So from when we get it, we have 65 days to open the hearing, and then the hearing can be extended, and often it's extended many times. And then once the hearing is closed, 90 days to make a decision and reduce it to writing.
Now, with the hearing extensions, what are the provisions for extending a public hearing?
It can go whatever.
The planning board and the applicant simply need to agree, and they form.
We would need their permission to extend it.
Yeah, and it can extend it for any reason, as long as the board and the applicant agree, and then Tessa provides the form, and both the board and the applicant sign it, and it gets filed with the town clerk. And that's all you have to do.
Right. But what if they don't agree, Jeff? Then we can't extend it, right?
Right. Then we go with what we have and deny it.
Can one deny it based on saying that we don't have enough? We haven't done the process fully.
Yeah, absolutely. That's why they go along and extend, because they don't want a denial.
And
That's written into the bylaw that we, the approval of these permits is at the sole discretion of the board.
Oh, yeah.
Right. And then is there anything in state law or federal law that would override that?
No, we track state law.
Okay.
Yep. In fact, with special permits, state law is pretty prescriptive. It lays it out how you need to do it, and you don't deviate much from that procedurally in our local requirements.
Jeff, I guess I would just ask you, like when we looked at the subdivision ones, so there were 4 and you and I sort of, parsed them out as appropriate. But that was a full couple of weeks. And so, and those are just those subdivision plans that, would you be concerned if they put 4 or 5 in front of us and we had to sort of, it could take years, I guess, if we could keep postponing him, but we have to keep track of it all, which is, I think, dropping a ball by mistake is the concern I have.
Well, they made it easy with the preliminary plans, but if we get definitive plans, that have to come within 7 months of June 26th. That's how they will preserve their rights, by submitting those definitive plans. And it's not just submitting the definitive plans, but the definitive plans have to be approved. So we would want to comb those thoroughly. And for that, we would probably need an engineering firm.
Okay, I have a question about we denied the preliminary plans. We have not heard anything about their objecting to that denial. What does that mean?
It doesn't mean anything. They could be reconciled to the fact that we got them, that the things we found are fatal, and that they're not real preliminary plans. They don't seem interested in the Baker one anymore, and that was the only plan that was actually a preliminary plan. So the 3 that they had didn't really meet the requirements of being a preliminary plan. Plus, they had all kinds of missing information. So maybe they've just said, they got us. We're gonna have to work with these, with these new bylaws.
I mean, unless they object to our denial, I mean, is it the case that they're subject to the new zoning?
No, preliminary plans can't be appealed. So there's no appeal of our rejection of the preliminary plans. You know, they can't take that to court or get it overruled or anything.
No, I think Deacon's saying if they proceed as if the preliminary plans are okay, then they would do final. But if they're not assuming that, and they just submitted, like he said, the first phase in one is going to be the Pratt Corner near Wheelock.
Yeah.
That's in opposition to the
Yeah.
new zones that we have for the current bylaw.
I didn't understand why he was saying that.
Well,
He believes that one can be grandfathered in.
But only if it's a subdivision.
Oh, the subdivision you're talking about, not the solar.
No, I'm saying, if it's got vested rights,
Well, he was introducing a different theory that perhaps what the new zoning bylaw says is that there's only one new solar project per division, which means you could have two on Wheelock Tract.
That's correct. That's what I'm talking about when I said.
okay,
Yeah, I would agree.
I don't think that's how it was written.
no.
Just a quick question, Jeff. You said something about submitting final subdivision plans in 7 months.
yes.
What's that about? Explain that, please.
Well, what they did with the preliminary plans simply is like a placeholder, a bookmark to get a process going. You know, if they submit the preliminary plans before the bylaw is adopted, which they claim to do the day before, and then within 7 months, they submit a definitive subdivision plan and it is approved, then they have 8 years of vested rights under the old bylaw.
But we denied their preliminary plans.
They could nonetheless submit definitive plans. We would have to review them. And if they were approved, they could then assert vested rights. And then we would have to say, you know, through our lawyer, no, you don't have any vested rights because you never, you submitted your definitive plans way after the bylaw was approved and you never gave us a proper preliminary plan. And that would be our argument that the town would make and it would be in court.
Right. And based on Donna feels like that's a defensible position.
Oh, yeah, it is. And the other lawyers I checked with felt it too.
Okay.
You know, they have not completed the ANRAD process for those three pre-existing projects. And my understanding from Penny was that there was a lot more work that needed to be done. We don't have the finalized maps and we don't have a finalized report from Stockman Associates for 3 of those lots.
Yeah.
And then there's 2 new ones, which they say they're going to be submitting soon, which have to go through the whole review process. And will probably require new wetlands delineations, which I kind of hate to have them doing in the wintertime.
Well, the interesting thing about that is if, you know, our new bylaws are in place, we're requiring the ANRAD as part of the process as opposed to the prior bylaws. So, you know, their special permit is contingent upon the ANRAD process.
Right. Right. But he was sort of sounding like it was all wrapped up, and it's not wrapped up, my understanding. Is that your understanding, Tessa?
Yeah, it's nowhere near complete.
It's not complete.
Is any of the non-completeness pursuant to deliverables from AMP Solar, or is it?
Yeah, well, from the engineering company that was doing the mapping, because their wetlands delineations were off and they had to go back and do resurveying them and then give those maps back so that Emily Stockman could do her final report, and she doesn't have them. I mean, it's conceivable there'll be something about those maps that she'd disagree with, and then, so I don't think anything's wrapped up.
Okay. It seems like we should, look at, everything around that process in terms of, the first, materials that were provided by the engineering firm. Was that hired by Amp Solar or by Town of Shutesbury?
No, it was a little mysterious. No, not by Shutesbury.
So
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm unfamiliar with some of these processes, so I'm trying to,
Yeah.
I'm trying to come up to speed with the way things work in addition to, analyze what's going on here.
So I'm still getting up to
Tessa.
speed too, but my understanding is that the AMP had hired a wetland delineator, delineate the wetlands when they brought the maps in front of the commission. So this was before I got hired, but when they brought the maps in front of the commission were concerned about them and have a bylaw that allows them to hire a consultant, a different outside wetland consultant at the expense of AMP. So AMP
Yeah.
has to pay for it, but the consultant was brought in because of the commission.
Yeah,
asking
it's a
for it.
peer reviewer.
Yes.
Okay, so the peer reviewer, is that the one we're waiting on now?
Well, no, our peer reviewer is Emily Stockman Associates. She's waiting on the developer to correct the errors
Okay, okay,
and complete the flagging so that it could be inspected. I imagine it's going to require going back and doing site visits to ensure that their delineations are flagged properly. And
okay. So this is kind of what I was getting at, right? If AMP is responsible for going back and possibly doing additional site visits and delivering this stuff, I think we just want to make sure that we have, good documentation and, good protocol around our, rejection of their initial materials that they put in, and make sure that there's not some kind of weird loophole, where, they can say, oh, we're not really sure what you're talking about. We submitted this stuff, and, just to make sure that that's all airtight so that they don't have any kind of way of getting around any of that.
Well, that's up to the Concom.
Right.
Jeff, I have a question just that Nathan made me think about. So if we're presuming that the Pratt Corner East, the one near the current Wheelock track, is going to be their first one that they submit, which is what he indicated, it sounded like they were going to submit a special permit. And so my understanding about this whole subdivision weirdness is that a developer can claim a subdivision and then at any point after the fact say, oh, never mind, we didn't really want to do a subdivision, we really want to do a special permit. So if they come forward, by the end of the year with a special permit, that makes the subdivision process out the window, and now it's just a special permit process, correct?
Yeah, if they have not gone through with filing a definitive plan and getting that approved, which could take a long, it's very expensive process, and could take months and months and months for us to review and approve that. If they decide not to go through with that, which would secure their vesting, and they just go forward with a special permit, then it's under our new bylaw.
Right. Which then raises the question, we said that there can only be one per zone, and that was our intent, and you're suggesting a second one. So that makes it a really clear discussion. It seems like.
I'm wearing out. I think we ought to think about wrapping up.
Deacon, their flood the zone has already started.
Yeah, well, let's
I'm fine with that.
I think we should try to close.
Yeah.
Okay, that sounds good.
So do I hear a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Sorry, who was the first and who was the second?
Michael made the motion. Linda was first on the second.
Okay,
good night, everybody.
I'll give it to
Good
you.
night, Miriam.
So.
We have to roll call.
Yeah, okay, Michael,
Aye.
Nathan,
Aye.
Linda,
Aye.
Steve,
Hi.
Robert,
Aye.
Jeff,
Aye.
and I'm an aye.
Great.
Thank
Aye.
you.
Tessa,
Thank
Nathan,
you.
welcome to the party.
Woohoo!
Splendid.
See you guys.
All righty,
Okay.
everybody.
All right, now
Good
I'll end the
night.
meeting for everyone.
Oh.
In a month.